When global music icon and tech entrepreneur JIMIN walks into Judge Beatrick Thorwald's courtroom without a lawyer to defend himself in a high-stakes patent battle, she can't help but laugh. After 30 years on the bench, she's seen it all, but never someone so famous and successful being so foolish. Little does she know, JIMIN's fumbling performance is hiding a brilliant legal strategy. As Magnateka's expensive lawyers present their seemingly airtight case, the judge continues to mock JIMIN's amateur approach. But behind his messy papers and confused demeanor, a trap is being set that will shock everyone in the courtroom, especially the judge who underestimated him. Judge Beatrick Thorwald banged her gavel 3 times. The sound echoed through courtroom 7 of the San Francisco Federal Building. The court is now in session, she announced, her voice sharp as a knife. Case number 2025 CV 7842, Magna Tech Industries vs. JIMIN Innovations. Judge Thorwald had spent 30 years on the bench. In that time, she'd seen it all: music superstars, tech giants, crooked politicians. None of them scared her. None of them impressed her either. So when JIMIN walked into her courtroom without a lawyer by his side, she couldn't help the tiny smirk that formed on her lips. Another celebrity who thought the rules didn't apply to him. Mr. JIMIN, she said, glancing down at her papers, my records show you're representing yourself today. Is that correct? JIMIN stood up. He wore a simple dark suit, no tie. Yes, Your Honor. A whisper ran through the courtroom. Even the court reporter raised her eyebrows. Bold choice, Judge Thorwald said. Well, let's not waste time. Opening statements, please. Magnatech, you're up first. Dominic Reeves, Magnateka's attorney, approached the bench. He was tall and polished in an expensive suit with slick gray hair and glasses that probably cost more than most people's cars. Your Honor, Reeves began, this case is quite simple. Mr. JIMIN's company stole our client's revolutionary battery design. We have the patent. We have the proof. By the end of this trial, the facts will speak for themselves. Judge Thorwald nodded. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. JIMIN, your opening statement. JIMIN walked to the front of the courtroom. He pulled some wrinkled papers from his pocket and dropped one. As he bent to pick it up, someone in the gallery chuckled. Your Honor, he began, his voice quieter than expected. I'm here because Magna Tech is trying to steal what my team created. He shuffled his papers, losing his place. The battery design in question uses a, special coating that JIMIN paused, looking confused. Sorry, I have some diagrams somewhere. Judge Thorwald couldn't help herself. A small laugh escaped her lips. Mr. JIMIN, she said, this isn't a concert rehearsal. In my courtroom, we follow proper legal procedure. Do you have your evidence organized and ready to present? I think so, Your Honor, he replied, still shuffling papers. The gallery erupted in laughter. Even the bailiff cracked a smile. Judge Thorwald raised her hand for quiet, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. From the plaintiff's table, Dominic Reeves shot JIMIN a look of smug satisfaction. This was going to be easier than he thought. In the gallery, a young woman with short black hair watched with growing concern. Lila Chen, JIMIN's head engineer, twisted her hands nervously in her lap. This wasn't going as planned. Perhaps, Judge Thorwald suggested, not unkindly, you should have hired an attorney, Mr. JIMIN. Patent law is complicated. It's not something most people can handle without legal training. I'll manage, Your Honor, JIMIN replied, finally organizing his papers. Very well, the judge said. Magna Tech, please present your case. 6 months earlier, the lab hummed with energy. Bright lights reflected off polished metal surfaces as JIMIN and Lila Chen bent over a workbench. Between them sat a device no bigger than a shoebox. It didn't look special, just a metal case with some wires, but both knew it could change the world. Run the test again, JIMIN said, his eyes never leaving the device. Lila tapped on her tablet. The device glowed blue along its edges. Power output holding at 98% efficiency, she reported, eyes wide. That's 3 times better than anything on the market. JIMIN didn't smile, he rarely did when working, but a spark lit his eyes. If this works at scale, we could power a house for a month on something the size of a brick, he said. Or a car for 1,000 miles. We did it, Lila whispered. We actually did it. That's when JIMIN's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Victor Hammond is here, he said. Lila's smile faded. Magnateka's CEO? Why? He wants to talk about a partnership, JIMIN sighed. Cover this up. I'll meet him in the conference room. Are you sure that's wise? Lila asked. Magna Tech has stolen designs before. Let me worry about that, JIMIN said, heading for the door. Just hide everything important. Victor Hammond was tall and polished, with perfect teeth and a too-firm handshake. JIMIN, thanks for seeing me, Hammond boomed. Two assistants flanked him, tablets in hand. "What can I do for you, Victor?" Jimin asked, not bothering with small talk. "I'll get right to it. Magnatech wants to partner with you on energy storage. We have the manufacturing capabilities you lack, and you have the creative spark our engineers sometimes miss." Jimin nodded slowly. "Interesting. What did you have in mind?" "A tour today and then we'll talk details." "I'd love to see what you're working on." Hammond smiled like a hungry shark. Jimin seemed to consider this. "A quick tour then. But some areas are off limits, ongoing research." Of course, Hammond agreed quickly. As they walked through the facility, Jimin noticed Hammond lingering in certain areas, his eyes taking in every detail. Once, Jimin could have sworn he saw one of Hammond's assistants snap a quick photo when they thought no one was looking. When they reached the main lab doors, Jimin stopped. "This area is restricted." Hammond nodded in understanding, but Jimin caught the flash of disappointment in his eyes. "Well, I've seen enough to know we could do great things together," Hammond said, extending his hand. "I'll have my people call your people." After Hammond left, Jimin went straight to security. "I want all footage of Hammond's visit," he told the head of security. "Every second." That night, Jimin replayed the footage in his office. There it was, Hammond's assistant taking photos when Jimin's back was turned. Hammond himself peering through a window into the restricted lab when he thought no one was watching. "I knew it," Jimin muttered. 2 months later, Lila burst into Jimin's office, face flushed with anger. "Magnatech just filed a patent," she said, slapping a printout on his desk. "For an energy storage device that uses our nanocoating technology." "They stole it, Jimin. They stole our design." Jimin picked up the papers, scanning them calmly, too calmly. "You don't seem surprised," Lila said, studying his face. "I'm not." Jimin leaned back in his chair. "Hammond never called about that partnership. I knew something was up. We have to fight this." Lila exclaimed. "Call the lawyers." "I already talked to them." Jimin stood and walked to the window. "They say it'll be tough to prove." Hammond was careful. "So we just give up?" Lila couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I didn't say that." Jimin turned, a strange light in his eyes. "I'm going to handle this myself." Lila's jaw dropped. "You mean personally? In court?" "Yes." "But Jimin, you're not a lawyer." "No," he agreed. "I'm not." In the weeks that followed, Jimin's behavior grew increasingly odd. He canceled meetings. He disappeared for hours. Once, Lila found him in his office at midnight, surrounded by legal textbooks, scribbling notes in the margins. "This is crazy," she said, picking up a book on patent law. "We have a legal team for this." "They'll expect a legal team," Jimin replied without looking up. "They won't expect me." "That's because this is a terrible idea," she said. "Hammond has the best lawyers money can buy." Jimin finally looked up, his eyes tired but determined. "Sometimes you have to do things yourself." "Is this about your ego?" Lila asked. "Proving you're smarter than everyone else?" "No," Jimin shook his head. "It's about justice. And strategy." Lila sighed, unconvinced. "What strategy involves going to court unprepared against professional attorneys?" Jimin smiled for the first time that night. "Who said anything about being unprepared?" He turned his notebook toward her. The pages were filled with precise notes, diagrams, and what looked like a timeline. "I know exactly what I'm doing," he said quietly. "Trust me." But as Lila looked at the determined face of her boss, she couldn't help but worry that this time, his famous confidence might be his downfall. What she didn't know was that Jimin had more than just notes and diagrams. He had a plan. A plan that would shock everyone, especially one very skeptical judge. Back in the courtroom, the first day of trial continued after lunch. Judge Thorwald straightened her black robes and checked her watch. Dominic Reeves had already set up his next visual aid, a large screen showing side-by-side comparisons of both companies' battery designs. "As you can clearly see, Your Honor," Reeves said, pointing with a laser pointer, "the similarities are undeniable. The internal structure, the cooling system, even the special coating, they're identical." From her elevated bench, Judge Thorwald nodded. "Continue, Mr. Reeves." "Magnatech spent millions developing this technology," Reeves continued, clicking to the next slide. "Years of research led to this breakthrough. Then, just weeks after we filed our patent, Mr. Jimin's company suddenly announced an identical product." In the gallery, reporters scribbled notes. This case had drawn media attention from around the world. Tech journalists, business reporters, and curious onlookers packed the rows of seats. "We'd like to call our first witness," Reeves announced. "Dr. Alan Murphy, Magnatech as head of research and development." A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses took the stand. After being sworn in, he settled nervously in the witness chair. "Dr. Murphy," Reeves began, "please explain to the court your role in developing this battery technology." I led the team that created the nanocoding, Murphy explained. It's the key innovation that allows for greater energy density and faster charging times. And when did you begin this work? Approximately 18 months ago, Murphy answered confidently. Judge Thorwald watched as Reeves guided his witness through a detailed explanation of the technology. The attorney was skilled breaking down complex concepts into understandable chunks. The judge found herself impressed by both the lawyer and the technology. Occasionally she glanced at Jimin. He remained oddly calm, taking notes but raising few objections. Once she caught him staring at a specific ceiling tile, seemingly lost in thought. Mr. Jimin, she interrupted sharply. Are you with us? Jimin blinked and focused on her. Yes, Your Honor. Just considering the testimony. Judge Thorwald frowned. Well, consider it more actively, please. This is your case, after all. A few people in the gallery chuckled. Judge Thorwald allowed herself a small smile. She dealt with arrogant superstars before, but usually they at least pretended to take court proceedings seriously. The testimony continued with Reeves calling a patent expert who explained the filing process and timeline. Once again, the evidence seemed damning for Jimin. As you can see, the expert concluded, Magnateka's filing predates any public mention of similar technology from Mr. Jimin's company. Judge Thorwald noticed Jimin writing something in his notebook. For a brief moment, she was curious about what strategy, if any, he was developing. Then she dismissed the thought. He was clearly out of his depth. Your Honor, Reeves said, I'd like to present our next piece of evidence. An assistant wheeled in a covered object. With a dramatic flourish, Reeves removed the cloth to reveal a battery prototype. This is the working prototype we developed before filing the patent, Reeves explained. Created entirely by the Magnatech team. From her seat in the gallery, Lila stiffened. She leaned forward, studying the device, her eyes narrowing in recognition. Judge Thorwald noticed the young woman's reaction and made a mental note. Something about that prototype had triggered a response. Would you like to examine the device, Your Honor? Reeves offered. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Judge Thorwald took the prototype, turning it carefully in her hands. Despite her legal background, she had studied engineering in college. Something about the design seemed elegant. Efficient. Impressive, she admitted, returning the device. Reeves smiled, sensing victory. Now, we'd like to call our final witness of the day, Victor Hammond, CEO of Magnatech. The tall, polished man Jimin had met months ago strode confidently to the witness stand. After being sworn in, he sat with perfect posture, exuding confidence. Mr. Hammond, Reeves began, please tell the court about your company's commitment to innovation. Hammond launched into a well-rehearsed speech about Magnateka's history of breakthroughs. Judge Thorwald listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Jimin to gauge his reaction. To her surprise, Jimin was now fully engaged, watching Hammond with intense focus. There was something almost predatory in his gaze. For the first time, Judge Thorwald felt a flicker of doubt. Was there more to Jimin's strategy than she'd assumed? Did you have any contact with Mr. Jimin or his company prior to developing this technology? Reeves asked. Minimal, Hammond replied smoothly. We had one brief meeting about potential collaboration, but nothing came of it. Judge Thorwald noticed a ghost of a smile cross Jimin's face. When Hammond finished his testimony, Reeves approached the bench. Your Honor, Mr. Jimin now has the opportunity to cross-examine our witness. Judge Thorwald turned to Jimin. Mr. Jimin, would you like to question Mr. Hammond? Jimin stood slowly. Not at this time, Your Honor. I'll reserve my questions for later. Hammond looked surprised, then relieved. He stepped down from the witness stand, shooting a triumphant glance at Jimin as he returned to his seat. Very well, Judge Thorwald said, unable to hide her disappointment. She had expected at least some attempt at a defense. Mr. Reeves, please continue. Your Honor, Reeves said with confidence, we've presented clear evidence that Magnatech developed and patented this technology first. Mr. Jimin's company clearly copied our client's innovative design. The evidence speaks for itself. Judge Thorwald nodded, finding herself agreeing with Reeves's assessment. The case seemed straightforward. Mr. Jimin, she said, turning to the superstar-turned-entrepreneur. You'll have your chance to present your defense tomorrow. I suggest you prepare more thoroughly than you have today. Jimin looked up from his notebook. I appreciate your concern, Your Honor. Something in his tone made Judge Thorwald pause. There was a confidence there that didn't match his apparently weak position. As she prepared to adjourn for the day, she noticed Jimin staring at that same spot on the wall again. Mr. Jimin, are you even paying attention? She asked sharply. Jimin turned to her with clear eyes. Always, Your Honor. More than you might think. For some reason she couldn't explain, Judge Thorwald felt a chill run down her spine. Perhaps there was more to Jimin than met the eye. But what could he possibly have planned that would counter the mountain of evidence against him? Court is adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Judge Thorwald announced, banging her gavel. As people filed out of the courtroom, Jimin gathered his messy stack of papers. Dominic Reeves walked past, barely hiding his smug smile. Better luck tomorrow, Jimin, he said quietly. Though I doubt luck will be enough. Jimin simply nodded. See you tomorrow, Reeves. In the hallway outside, reporters swarmed around both men. Mr. Jimin, will you hire an attorney now? One shouted. Mr. Reeves, is this case as clear-cut as it seems? Called another. Jimin pushed through the crowd without answering. Lila caught up to him at the courthouse steps. That was brutal, she said. Hammond lied under oath about your meeting. I noticed, Jimin replied calmly. And that prototype, that was our design. They just changed the outer casing. I know. Lila grabbed his arm, stopping him. Jimin, you need to do something. They're destroying us in there. Jimin glanced back at the courthouse, his face unreadable. I'm about to. 20 minutes later, they sat in a rented office across from the courthouse. Jimin had converted it into a temporary workspace with computers, whiteboards, and boxes of files. What are we doing here? Lila asked, watching Jimin boot up a laptop. Preparing, he answered. I need you to access our building's security logs from the day Hammond visited. The security logs? Why? Just trust me. While Lila worked, Jimin made a phone call. It's me, he said to the person on the other end. Are you ready for tomorrow? He listened for a moment. Good. Remember, timing is everything. Lila looked up from her computer. I have the logs. What now? Find all footage of Hammond and his team. I want every second they were in our building. For hours, they combed through security videos. Lila gasped when she spotted what Jimin was looking for. There, she pointed at the screen. Hammond's assistant taking photos in the restricted area. Jimin nodded. And here, he said, forwarding to another clip. Hammond himself looking through the lab window after I told him that area was off limits. This proves they were spying, Lila said excitedly. But, is it enough to win the case? Not by itself, Jimin admitted. We need more. He pulled out his phone and sent a text. Within minutes, it buzzed with a response. Jimin smiled as he read it. What? Lila asked. Let's just say I've been working on this case longer than Hammond realizes. As midnight approached, Jimin was still preparing. He had assembled what looked like a small electronic device on the desk. What's that? Lila asked, yawning. A demonstration, Jimin replied. For tomorrow. Shouldn't you be working on your legal arguments instead? Jimin looked up, a glint in his eye. Sometimes, the best legal argument isn't a legal argument at all. Morning came too quickly. Back in the courtroom, Judge Thorwald called the session to order. Mr. Jimin, are you ready to present your defense? She asked, expecting the same fumbling performance as yesterday. Jimin stood. Actually, Your Honor, I'd like to request a one-day recess. Surprised murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Thorwald frowned. A recess? On what grounds? I need to reconsider my approach, Jimin said, sounding defeated. Given the strong case against me. More whispers. Reeves couldn't hide his triumphant smile. Judge Thorwald studied Jimin's face. Was he finally admitting defeat? Or was this part of some strategy she couldn't see? Your Honor, Reeves interrupted, we object to this delay. Mr. Jimin had ample time to prepare his defense. I understand, Jimin said quickly, but after yesterday's testimony, I realize I may need professional assistance. Laughter rippled through the gallery. Judge Thorwald allowed herself a small smile. So, he was finally admitting he needed a lawyer. While I'm tempted to deny your request, Mr. Jimin, she said, I'll grant a one-day recess. But don't waste our time tomorrow. Thank you, Your Honor, Jimin said, bowing his head slightly. As the courtroom emptied, Reeves approached Jimin. Finally realized you're out of your depth? He asked. Something like that, Jimin replied. Back at their temporary office, Lila paced anxiously. I don't understand. Why did you ask for a delay when we spent all night preparing? Because, Jimin explained, typing rapidly on his laptop, I want them overconfident. Hammond thinks I'm giving up. But what are we actually doing today? Lila demanded. Two things, Jimin said, not looking up. First, we're finishing this. He pointed to the electronic device they'd worked on last night. And second, Jimin finally looked up, his expression serious. We're meeting someone important. Later that afternoon, a woman arrived at their office. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked nervous. Ms. Nair, Jimin greeted her. Thank you for coming. I'm risking my career being here, the woman said quietly. I know, Jimin replied. But it's the right thing to do. Lila looked confused. Who is she? Priya Nair, Jimin explained. Until last week, she was Magnateka's head of research and development. Lila's eyes widened. Wait, not Dr. Murphy? Murphy was promoted after I left, Priya explained. I couldn't stay after what Hammond asked us to do. For the next hour, Jimin and Priya talked quietly while Lila finished assembling the electronic demonstration. As evening fell, Jimin seemed more confident than ever. Are you sure about this? Lila asked as they packed up. It's unorthodox even for you. Jimin smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of his computer screen. Sometimes innovation isn't just about technology. That's not an answer, Lila sighed. Trust me, Jimin said, closing his laptop. By this time tomorrow, Judge Thorwald won't be laughing anymore. That night, while Hammond and Reeves celebrated their seemingly inevitable victory with expensive whiskey, Jimin made one final preparation for the next day's court session, a simple cardboard box that would change everything. The next morning, excitement buzzed around the courthouse. News of Jimin's requested recess had spread and many speculated he was preparing to surrender. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras ready. Mr. Jimin, have you hired an attorney? Will you settle with Magnatek? Are you giving up the case? Jimin walked through them without answering, the cardboard box tucked under his arm. Lila followed close behind, her face a mask of calm that hid her nervousness. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Victor Hammond sat confidently at the plaintiff's table, whispering with Reeves. They both looked up when Jimin entered, eyeing the box with curiosity. What's he up to now? Hammond muttered. Probably his surrender terms, Reeves replied with a smirk. Judge Thorwald entered and everyone stood as she took her seat. She noticed Jimin looked different today. Gone was the fumbling, distracted demeanor. Instead, he stood straight, his eyes clear and focused. Court is now in session, she announced. Mr. Jimin, yesterday you requested time to reconsider your approach. Have you decided to seek legal counsel? No, Your Honor, Jimin replied, his voice stronger than before. I'll continue representing myself. Judge Thorwald sighed dramatically. Very well. Are you ready to present your defense? I am, Your Honor. But first, I'd like to call a surprise witness. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Reeves jumped to his feet. Objection. We received no notice of additional witnesses. Judge Thorwald frowned. Mr. Jimin, this isn't a TV drama. That's not how real court proceedings work. I understand, Your Honor, Jimin replied calmly. But these are special circumstances. My witness only came forward yesterday after seeing Magnateka's testimony. Judge Thorwald studied Jimin's face. There was something different about him today. A quiet confidence she hadn't seen before. This better be good, she warned. Who is the witness? Priya Nair, former head of research and development at Magnatek. The name sent a visible shock through the Magnatek team. Hammond's face paled. Reeves stood again, his composure slipping. Objection. Ms. Nair is bound by a confidentiality agreement with Magnatek. She cannot testify about company matters. That's not entirely accurate, Jimin countered. Ms. Nair's agreement has exceptions for illegal activity, which is precisely what she wishes to address. The room fell silent. Judge Thorwald leaned forward, her interest piqued despite herself. Mr. Reeves, your objection is noted but overruled. I'll allow the witness. She turned to Jimin. This better be relevant, Mr. Jimin. It is, Your Honor. Thank you. A court officer opened the door and Priya Nair entered. She looked nervous but determined as she took the oath and settled into the witness stand. Ms. Nair, Jimin began, until recently what was your position at Magnatek? I was head of research and development for 8 years, she replied, her voice steady despite her obvious tension. And why did you leave? Priya took a deep breath. I resigned last week due to ethical concerns about the battery technology at issue in this case. Another murmur swept through the courtroom. Hammond was now whispering urgently to Reeves. Could you elaborate on those concerns? Jimin asked. The technology wasn't developed by Magnatek, Priya stated clearly. We were ordered to reverse engineer Mr. Jimin's prototype after Mr. Hammond visited his facility. The courtroom erupted. Judge Thorwald banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in the court. When quiet returned, Reeves was on his feet again, his face flushed with anger. Your Honor, these are baseless accusations. Where's the proof? An excellent question, Judge Thorwald agreed, turning to Jimin. Do you have evidence to support this testimony? I do, Your Honor. Jimin finally opened the mysterious cardboard box. From it, he removed a laptop and a small device. Ms. Nair, he continued, did Mr. Hammond specifically instruct your team to copy my design? Yes, she answered firmly. After his visit to your facility, he called an emergency meeting. He showed us photos his assistant had taken and told us to recreate the technology as quickly as possible. Hammond's face had gone from pale to red. He scribbled something and pushed it toward Reeves. And what about Dr. Murphy who testified yesterday? Jimin asked. Alan was promoted to my position after I questioned the ethics of what we were doing, Priya explained. He was willing to go along with Hammond's plan. Reeves stood again. Your Honor, this is hearsay and speculation. Is it? Jimin asked calmly. He connected his laptop to the courtroom's display system. With the court's permission, I'd like to show some evidence. Judge Thorwald nodded, now fully engaged. Proceed, Mr. Jimin. The screen lit up with security footage from Jimin's facility. It clearly showed Hammond's assistant taking photos in restricted areas and Hammond himself peering through windows he'd been told were off-limits. This proves nothing, Reeves argued. Looking isn't stealing. Perhaps not, Jimin said. But this might be more convincing. He clicked to the next file, emails between Hammond and Priya discussing how to repurpose Jimin's design. Reeves stared at the screen in shock. Where did you get those? He demanded. Ms. Nair provided them, Jimin explained. Along with these. The next images showed side-by-side comparisons of internal components, Jimin's original designs and Magnateka's copies. They were identical. Judge Thorwald's expression had transformed completely. The skepticism was gone, replaced by growing shock. There's more, Jimin continued. Ms. Nair has provided internal memos showing that Magnatech had no similar technology in development before Hammond's visit to my facility. Their entire claim is fraudulent. Hammond could no longer contain himself. This is a setup, he shouted, rising from his chair. You can't believe this. Mr. Hammond, Judge Thorwald warned, control yourself or I'll have you removed. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted completely. Now it was Reeves who looked flustered and unprepared, while Jimin appeared calm and in control. Judge Thorwald turned to Priya. Ms. Nair, you understand the seriousness of your testimony. You're accusing Magnatech of corporate espionage and fraud. I do, Your Honor, Priya replied. That's why I resigned. I couldn't be part of it anymore. As the morning session continued, Judge Thorwald found herself watching Jimin with new eyes. The bumbling, distracted man from yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone precise and methodical who had apparently planned this moment from the beginning. Had it all been an act? Had he deliberately appeared unprepared to lull Magnatech into overconfidence? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Judge Beatrix Thorwald was no longer laughing at Jimin. Ms. Nair, Jimin continued, could you tell the court exactly what happened after Mr. Hammond returned from his visit to my facility? Priya Nair sat straight in the witness chair, her hands folded in her lap. Once Magnateka's star scientist, she was now their worst nightmare. Mr. Hammond called an emergency meeting that same afternoon, she began. He was extremely excited. He showed us photos his assistant had taken secretly during the tour and said he'd seen a gold mine of ideas. In the plaintiff's section, Hammond's face darkened. He scribbled a note and slid it to Reeves, who shook his head slightly. Did he specifically mention my energy storage technology? Jimin asked. Yes. He was particularly interested in the nano coating. He said it was the key to making batteries hold more power for longer periods. And what did he ask your team to do? He told us to drop everything else and focus on recreating what he'd seen. His exact words were, I want this technology before Jimin can patent it. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Judge Thorwald leaned forward, completely absorbed. This was not at all what she had expected when the day began. Did you raise any concerns about this directive? Jimin continued. Priya nodded. I told Mr. Hammond that what he was suggesting sounded like corporate espionage. I suggested we pursue a legitimate partnership instead. And how did he respond? He said, and I quote, why pay for what we can take for free? Another ripple of reaction spread through the gallery. Hammond was now red-faced with anger. That's a lie, he shouted, unable to contain himself. She's making this up. Mr. Hammond. Judge Thorwald snapped. One more outburst and I'll have you removed from my courtroom. Jimin remained calm, seemingly unaffected by the drama. Ms. Nair, he said gently, do you have any evidence to support your testimony? Yes, she replied. I kept notes from all our meetings. I also saved emails and text messages where these directives were given. Your Honor, Jimin addressed the judge, I'd like to enter these documents into evidence. He handed a folder to the court clerk who passed it to Judge Thorwald. She opened it and began reviewing the contents, her expression growing more serious with each page. Reeves finally recovered enough to stand. Your Honor, these documents should be inadmissible. They contain proprietary Magnatech information that Ms. Nair had no right to remove from the company. Actually, Jimin countered, according to Magnateka's own employment contract, which I've included in that folder, employees are both protected and obligated to report potential illegal activities. Ms. Nair was acting within her rights. Judge Thorwald nodded slowly. I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Jimin on this point. The documents are admitted. Reeves sat down heavily, looking stunned. Hammond was now whispering urgently to one of his assistants, who quickly left the courtroom. Ms. Nair, Jimin continued, what happened after you expressed these concerns? I was gradually sidelined. Tasks were reassigned. Then 2 weeks ago, Alan Murphy was promoted to my position and I was transferred to a different department. Did that surprise you? No. I'd already started looking for another job because I couldn't ethically continue at Magnatech. When they transferred me, I resigned immediately. One final question, Jimin said. Did Magnatech have any similar energy storage technology in development before Hammond's visit to my facility? No, Priya stated firmly. We were working on completely different approaches. Our research was at least 2 years away from anything close to your design. Thank you, Ms. Nair. Jimin turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to present one more piece of evidence before Mr. Reeves cross-examines the witness. Proceed, Judge Thorwald said. Jimin placed his small electronic device on the evidence table. This is a demonstration unit I created to illustrate how Magnatech's supposedly original design is actually a copy of mine. He activated the device, which projected a holographic display showing both designs layer by layer. As each component appeared, the identical nature of the technologies became impossible to deny. As you can see, Jimin explained, even the internal arrangement of components is identical. The chances of two teams independently creating such similar designs are essentially zero. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. The evidence was overwhelming. Your Honor, Reeves said finally, rising again, we request a brief recess to consult with our client. Judge Thorwald checked her watch. We'll break for lunch. Court will reconvene at 1 o'clock. As the gallery emptied, Lila rushed to Jimin's side. That was amazing, she whispered. Did you see Hammond's face? Jimin nodded slightly, keeping his expression neutral. We're not done yet. In the hallway, reporters swarmed around both parties. Reeves pushed through without comment, Hammond close behind him with a security guard blocking cameras. Mr. Jimin, a reporter called out. Was your confused performance yesterday an act? Jimin merely smiled. No comment. In a private conference room, Reeves faced Hammond across the table. This is bad, Victor. Really bad. She's lying. Hammond insisted, pacing the room. It's her word against mine. It's her word plus emails, texts, and documents, Reeves corrected him. Not to mention the visual evidence of the copied technology. We need to settle this. Now. No. I won't give him the satisfaction. You might not have a choice, Reeves warned. If this continues, we're looking at more than losing a patent case. This could become a criminal matter. Hammond stopped pacing. What are you saying? I'm saying corporate espionage is a crime. So is perjury, which you committed yesterday when you downplayed your meeting with Jimin. Hammond's face paled. You're my lawyer. Fix this. I'm trying, Reeves replied grimly. But you need to accept reality. Jimin outplayed us. Meanwhile, in another conference room, Judge Thorwald sat alone, reviewing the morning's evidence. 30 years on the bench had taught her to spot liars, and Priya Nair was telling the truth. The emails and documents corroborated her testimony perfectly. She found herself reassessing Jimin. She had dismissed him as an arrogant amateur. But now she wondered if she had been the amateur all along. His strategy, appearing unprepared while gathering devastating evidence, was brilliant. When court reconvened, the tension was palpable. Reeves approached Jimin before the judge arrived. My client is willing to discuss settlement terms, he said quietly. I'm not interested in settling, Jimin replied. Don't be stubborn. We can make this go away quietly. That's not why I'm here. Before Reeves could respond, Judge Thorwald entered and everyone stood. Before we continue, she announced, I want to clarify something. Ms. Nair's testimony suggests not just patent infringement, but potentially criminal activity. Do you understand the seriousness of these allegations? I do, Your Honor, Priya replied. That's why I resigned my position and came forward. It was the right thing to do. Judge Thorwald nodded. Mr. Reeves, you may cross-examine the witness. Reeves approached the stand. His earlier confidence was gone. Ms. Nair, isn't it true that you were passed over for promotion several times at Magnatech? No, she replied calmly. I was offered promotions twice and declined them to stay in research. And you're not bitter about Mr. Murphy's promotion? I was relieved. It meant I was no longer responsible for a project I believed was unethical. Reeves tried several more angles, but Priya remained unshaken. Her testimony was clear, consistent, and damning. When Reeves finally sat down, Judge Thorwald turned to Jimin. Do you have any more witnesses, Mr. Jimin? No, Your Honor. Ms. Nair's testimony and the evidence I've presented speak for themselves. Judge Thorwald nodded thoughtfully. They certainly do. As the afternoon's session continued, one thing became abundantly clear to everyone in the courtroom. Jimin hadn't just prepared for this case, he had orchestrated every moment of it. And he was far from finished. Your Honor, Jimin said, rising from his seat. I'd now like to address the legal remedy I'm seeking. Judge Thorwald nodded. Proceed, Mr. Jimin. Jimin walked to the center of the courtroom, no longer the fumbling figure from the first day. He moved with purpose, his voice clear and confident. Based on the evidence presented, I'm not just asking for Magnateka's patent to be invalidated. I'm requesting a specific legal remedy outlined in the Technological Innovation Protection Act of 2018. A puzzled look crossed Reeves's face. Judge Thorwald also appeared curious. Section 47(b) of that act, Jimin continued, states that in cases where corporate espionage is proven, the court may issue an order preventing the offending party from developing similar technology for up to 5 years. The courtroom fell silent. Even Judge Thorwald appeared taken aback. Mr. Jimin, she said, leaning forward, I'm familiar with technology patent law, but I don't recall that specific provision. It's relatively obscure, Your Honor, Jimin acknowledged. It was added as an amendment during the bill's final passage. Few cases have invoked it. He handed a document to the court clerk, who passed it to the judge. She studied it carefully, her eyebrows rising slightly. He's right, she murmured almost to herself. Reeves jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is preposterous. Such a remedy would effectively lock Magnatech out of an entire market segment. That's precisely the point, Jimin responded calmly. The law was designed to create serious consequences for corporate espionage. Otherwise, companies would simply treat legal penalties as a cost of doing business. Judge Thorwald was now nodding slightly as she read through the statute. The language is quite clear, she admitted. In cases of proven corporate espionage related to technological innovation, the court may issue a development prohibition order. Hammond whispered urgently to Reeves, who looked increasingly distressed. Your Honor, Reeves said, we need time to review the statute and prepare a response. That seems reasonable, Judge Thorwald agreed. We'll adjourn for today and reconvene tomorrow morning. She turned to Jimin. I must say, Mr. Jimin, I'm impressed by your knowledge of patent law. Thank you, Your Honor, Jimin replied with a small smile. I've been studying. As the courtroom began to empty, Reeves approached Jimin again, his manner now almost pleading. Be reasonable, Jimin. A 5-year ban would devastate Magnateka's energy division. You should have thought of that before stealing my technology, Jimin replied simply. In the gallery, Lila watched the exchange with wide eyes. When Jimin joined her, she couldn't contain her amazement. How did you find that law? She whispered as they left the courtroom. I've never heard of it. Because most lawyers haven't either, Jimin explained. I spent weeks researching obscure patent statutes. When I found this one, I knew it was perfect. Outside the courthouse, reporters once again swarmed around them. Mr. Jimin, is it true you're asking for Magnatech to be banned from the energy storage market? Was your confused act just a strategy to catch them off guard? No comment, Jimin repeated, pushing through the crowd. Back at their temporary office, Lila's excitement bubbled over. You were amazing in there. Hammond looked like he was going to pass out when you mentioned that law. Jimin allowed himself a small smile. The case isn't over yet. Oh, come on, Lila insisted. Judge Thorwald is totally on your side. She's doing her job, Jimin corrected. Judges don't take sides. They follow the law. Which you happen to know better than Magnateka's expensive lawyers. Lila laughed. Jimin's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it and his expression turned serious. What is it? Lila asked. Hammond's people have been calling Priya Nair, Jimin said. Threatening her. That's witness intimidation. We should tell the judge. We will, Jimin assured her. Tomorrow. The next morning, the courtroom was more crowded than ever. News of the unusual legal maneuver had gone viral overnight, drawing international attention. Reporters, industry insiders, and legal analysts packed every available seat. Judge Thorwald called the court to order. Before we continue, she said, I've reviewed the statute Mr. Jimin cited yesterday. It is indeed applicable to this case, provided the evidence of corporate espionage meets the legal standard. She turned to Reeves. Counsel, do you wish to respond to Mr. Jimin's request for a development prohibition order? Reeves stood. Yes, Your Honor. We challenge the credibility of Ms. Nair's testimony and the authenticity of the documents she provided. On what grounds? We believe Ms. Nair may have altered these documents after leaving Magnatech, possibly in collaboration with Mr. Jimin. Judge Thorwald frowned. That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence to support it? We're prepared to present technical analysis suggesting the documents were modified recently, Reeves said. Jimin rose calmly. Your Honor, I anticipated this attack on Ms. Nair's character. That's why I took the precaution of having the original electronic documents verified by an independent forensic expert. He handed another file to the court clerk. This report confirms the documents are genuine and unaltered. He paused, then added, additionally, I must inform the court that Ms. Nair has received threatening phone calls from Magna Tech representatives since her testimony yesterday. Judge Thorwald's expression darkened. Is that so, Mr. Reeves? Does your client know that witness intimidation is a serious offense? Reeves turned pale. Your Honor, if such calls were made, they were not authorized by Magnatech's management or legal team. Judge Thorwald was clearly unconvinced. As the morning proceeded, she watched Jimin with growing admiration. The man who had stumbled through opening statements just days ago now articulated complex legal arguments with clarity and confidence. Even some of Magnatech's junior attorneys were watching him with undisguised respect. Victor Hammond, meanwhile, sat at the plaintiff's table, collar loosened, visibly sweating. The confident CEO who had expected an easy victory now looked like a man trying to prevent disaster. Your Honor, Reeves said, making one last attempt, we request permission to present a technical expert who will testify that Magnatech's design, while similar, contains significant differences. I'll allow it, Judge Thorwald said. Call your witness. A tall man with a neat beard and glasses approached the stand. After being sworn in, he introduced himself as Dr. Marcus Whitfield, Chief Technical Officer at Cambridge Energy Systems. Dr. Whitfield, Reeves began, you've examined both companies' battery designs. In your expert opinion, could Magnatech have developed their technology independently? Yes, Dr. Whitfield replied confidently. While there are similarities in the overall approach, I noted several distinct engineering choices in Magnatech's implementation. Could you elaborate? Certainly. The cooling system configuration, for instance, uses a different arrangement of channels. And the casing material contains proprietary compounds not present in Mr. Jimin's design. Judge Thorwald listened carefully, taking notes. So in your professional opinion, Reeves concluded, these designs could have been developed independently? It's certainly possible, Dr. Whitfield agreed. Similar problems often lead to similar solutions in engineering. Thank you, Doctor. Reeves turned to Jimin. Your witness. The courtroom tensed as Jimin approached the stand. Instead of attacking Dr. Whitfield, he smiled politely. Dr. Whitfield, what's the primary innovation that makes both these battery designs so efficient? The nano-coating on the electrode surfaces, the expert replied without hesitation. And this coating is applied in several distinct layers, correct? Yes, that's right. Jimin nodded. Could you describe the specific sequence of these layers? Dr. Whitfield looked slightly uncomfortable. Well, both designs use a graphene base layer, followed by a titanium composite, then a proprietary ceramic material. Identical proprietary materials? Jimin asked innocently. Well, yes. Surprisingly similar. And what are the odds of two companies independently developing identical proprietary materials in identical layering sequences? Dr. Whitfield shifted in his seat. It would be highly unlikely. Jimin continued asking seemingly innocent technical questions, each one gradually cornering the expert until he contradicted his own testimony. Finally, Jimin said directly, Dr. Whitfield, the cooling system and casing differences you mentioned, aren't those merely cosmetic changes that don't affect the core technology? After a long pause, the expert sighed. Yes. The fundamental innovation, the nano-coating, is essentially identical in both designs. No further questions. Reeves, grasping for hope, stood. Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Hammond to testify directly. Proceed, Judge Thorwald said. Hammond took the stand, trying to regain control. After being sworn in, he answered with practiced ease. Mr. Hammond, Reeves began, did you instruct your team to copy Mr. Jimin's technology? Absolutely not, Hammond stated. We visited his facility as potential partners. When that didn't work out, we continued developing our own solutions. Was Magnatech already researching similar battery technologies? Yes. For years. Reeves nodded. And how do you respond to Ms. Nair's accusations? She was a disgruntled employee who became difficult after being passed over for promotion. These claims are retaliation. Judge Thorwald watched Hammond closely. He was smooth but not convincing. Jimin stood for cross-examination. Mr. Hammond, he began, you claim Magnatech was already developing similar technology. Could you explain the core innovations in that research? We were exploring various nano-coatings for electrodes. Could you be more specific? I'm not a technical person, Hammond evaded. I rely on my team for the details. Yet you signed off on the patent application. In general terms, yes. Jimin picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter the security footage as evidence. He played a clip of Hammond's assistant clearly taking photos in restricted areas. In another, Hammond is seen watching her, then peering through lab windows. Perhaps your memory needs refreshing, Jimin suggested. I wasn't aware my assistant was taking photos. Jimin played the next clip, Hammond making eye contact with the assistant as she snapped a picture. Now visibly sweating, Hammond squirmed in his chair. Mr. Hammond, Jimin asked calmly, are you familiar with this notebook? He held up a small leather-bound journal. Hammond's eyes widened. Where did you get that? Ms. Nair retrieved it when instructed to salvage items from your office after a water leak. Jimin opened it to a marked page. Would you please read this entry dated the day after your visit to my facility? Hammond said nothing. If you prefer, I can read it, Jimin offered. He turned to the judge. May I? Go ahead, Mr. Jimin. Jimin read aloud, saw Jimin's new battery tech today. Revolutionary nano coding. Need to fast-track our version before he patents it. Assign Priya's team to reverse engineer ASAP. Gasps echoed around the courtroom. No further questions, Jimin said quietly. Judge Thorwald checked her watch. We'll take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I'd like to see both parties in my chambers. Inside her chambers, Judge Thorwald sat behind her desk, glasses off, rubbing the bridge of her nose. 30 years on the bench, and rarely had she seen such a total reversal in a case. When both parties entered, she gestured to the chairs across from her. Please sit. Jimin and Reeves did. Hammond remained standing, too agitated to settle. I've called you here, Judge Thorwald said, because this case has taken an extraordinary turn. She turned to Reeves. Given the evidence presented, I strongly suggest your client consider settlement options. Reeves nodded grimly. We're prepared to discuss terms, Your Honor. I'm not. Hammond cut in. This isn't over. Judge Thorwald fixed him with a stern gaze. Mr. Hammond, you should understand your position. The evidence against you is overwhelming. If I rule against Magnatech, which seems increasingly likely, you face not only the loss of the patent but a 5-year ban from the market. Additionally, this may trigger criminal investigations. Hammond paled but remained defiant. There are appeals courts. Yes, the judge agreed. And they generally defer to the trial court's findings of fact. The facts here are damning. She turned to Jimin. Mr. Jimin, would you be open to settlement discussions? Jimin considered it for a moment. I came here for justice, not money. The 5-year development ban is non-negotiable. Hammond scoffed. That's unreasonable. What's unreasonable, Jimin replied calmly, is stealing someone else's work and then suing them for it. Judge Thorwald leaned back in her chair, studying Jimin with newfound respect. Then she did something unexpected. Mr. Jimin, she said, her tone softening, I owe you an apology. Everyone in the room looked surprised, Jimin included. I made assumptions about you when this trial began, she continued. I thought you were arrogant and unprepared. I was wrong and my behavior was unprofessional. You've presented your case more thoroughly than most lawyers I've seen. Jimin nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge hesitated, then added, I feel I should explain something. She glanced at Reeves and Hammond. Would you gentlemen excuse us for a moment? They left. Judge Thorwald stood and walked to the window looking out over the city. For years ago, my son worked for Solar Tech Industries. When your company acquired them, he lost his job. He struggled for months afterward. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. I remember that acquisition. We had to eliminate redundant positions. I know, she said. It was a business decision. Nothing personal. But as a mother, I let it color my impression of you. That was wrong of me. I understand, Jimin said. Business decisions affect real people. I try to remember that. Judge Thorwald turned back to him. Your legal strategy was brilliant. The way you appeared unprepared to lower their guard. I've never seen anything like it. Sometimes innovative thinking applies outside of technology, Jimin said with a small smile. A knock at the door interrupted them. The clerk poked her head in. Judge, Mr. Hammond is asking to speak with Mr. Jimin privately. Judge Thorwald raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. I'll hear what he has to say, Jimin agreed. When Hammond entered, his demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the arrogant CEO. Now he looked like a desperate man. Jimin, he said without preamble. Name your price. Whatever you want. Just drop the 5-year ban. It's not about money, Jimin replied. Everyone has a price. 10 million. 20? The ban stands, Jimin said firmly. Your company tried to steal years of my team's work. There are consequences for that. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Hammond hissed. Watching me squirm? No, Jimin said. I'd have preferred a fair competition where we both innovated on our own merits. Judge Thorwald watched this exchange with interest. Two powerful men, but only one had maintained his integrity. Gentlemen, she said, re-entering the room, I think we've said all that needs saying. Let's return to the courtroom and conclude this matter properly. Back in the courtroom, the gallery fell silent as they returned. Lila caught Jimin's eye from her seat and raised her eyebrows in question. He gave her a small nod. She smiled in relief. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Thorwald announced, I am prepared to rule on this matter. She turned to the parties. Mr. Reeves. Mr. Jimin. Please prepare to deliver your closing arguments. Reeves shuffled his papers nervously. Jimin sat calmly, his notes perfectly arranged. Mr. Reeves, Judge Thorwald said. Your closing statement. Reeves stood. Your Honor, while the evidence presented by Mr. Jimin is concerning, we maintain that Magnatech developed its technology through legitimate means. Ms. Nair's testimony should be viewed with skepticism given her departure from the company. He continued for several more minutes, but his arguments were weak, even he knew it. Hammond sat beside him, eyes down, shoulders slumped. Thank you, Mr. Reeves, the judge said. Mr. Jimin? Jimin approached the bench. Unlike his first appearance, he stood tall. His voice was clear. Confident. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. Magnatech's CEO visited my facility, secretly photographed proprietary technology, and directed his team to copy it. Their own documents and witnesses confirm this. Justice requires not just invalidating their fraudulent patent, but implementing the 5-year development ban. Without real consequences, corporate espionage continues unchecked. Short. Simple. Devastating. Jimin returned to his seat as murmurs spread through the courtroom. Judge Thorwald nodded. I'll deliver my ruling now. The room went silent. Everyone knew this ruling would set a precedent across the tech industry. This court has carefully considered all evidence presented, she began. The testimony of Priya Nair, corroborated by electronic communications and Mr. Hammond's own notes, establishes clear evidence of corporate espionage. Hammond closed his eyes. Therefore, Magnatech patent number 108726, HN1 is hereby invalidated. She paused. Furthermore, pursuant to Section 47B of the Technological Innovation Protection Act, Magnatech Industries is prohibited from developing or marketing similar energy storage technology for a period of 5 years from today. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. She wasn't just ruling in Jimin's favor, she was granting his full requested remedy. Additionally, Magnatech shall pay damages of $20 million to Mr. Jimin's company for attempted patent infringement, plus all legal costs associated with this case. She turned to Hammond. This court also refers this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for review of potential criminal charges related to industrial espionage and perjury. Hammond looked like he might collapse. Before we conclude, Judge Thorwald added, I wish to address something. She removed her glasses and looked directly at the gallery of reporters. When this trial began, I made assumptions about Mr. Jimin. I doubted his abilities. I regret to say, I even made unprofessional remarks. Murmurs rippled through the room. The court stands corrected. Mr. Jimin has demonstrated that innovative thinking applies to legal strategy as well as technology. His preparation and presentation were exemplary. Jimin nodded respectfully. Court is adjourned, Judge Thorwald said, and banged her gavel one final time. The courtroom erupted in conversation. Reporters rushed for the exits, eager to break the news. Hammond and Reeves huddled grimly, faces pale. Lila hurried to Jimin's side. We did it, she whispered. You were amazing. We were amazing, Jimin corrected. Your technical expertise was crucial. As they packed their materials, Judge Thorwald approached. Mr. Jimin, she said. A word. Lila stepped aside, giving them privacy. That was a remarkable case, the judge said. I've never seen anything quite like it. Thank you, Your Honor. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. May I ask you something? Of course. That first day, was it all an act? Jimin smiled slightly. Not entirely. I was nervous. But yes, appearing unprepared was strategic. Judge Thorwald shook her head in amazement. Brilliantly executed. She hesitated again. My son found a new job, by the way. He's doing well now. I'm glad to hear it, Jimin replied sincerely. Well, she said, offering her hand. Congratulations on your victory. They shook hands, a quiet moment of mutual respect between two brilliant minds who had once been at odds. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed again. Mr. Jimin, how does it feel to win? Was your strategy planned from the beginning? Will you pursue criminal charges against Mr. Hammond? Jimin raised his hands to quiet them. I came here seeking justice, not revenge, he said simply. The ruling speaks for itself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. He made his way through the crowd, where Lila waited with the car. As they pulled away, she glanced at him. So, what happens now? Jimin looked out the window, already thinking ahead. Now, we get back to what matters. Building things that change the world. But even as he said it, he knew this case had changed more than just his company. It had changed the entire tech industry. The next time a corporation considered stealing someone else's innovation, they'd remember what happened to Magnatech. And think twice. 2 months later, a sleek black car pulled up to the security gate at JIMIN Innovations headquarters. Judge Beatrick Thorwald, now retired, showed her ID to the guard, who waved her through. She had stepped down from the bench 1 month after the Magnatech case, surprising many in the legal community. 30 years was enough, she had told reporters. Time for new challenges. In the lobby, Lila Chun greeted her with a smile. Judge Thorwald, it's good to see you again. Please, the former judge replied warmly. Just call me Beat Rick. Elon's waiting for you in the lab, Lila said, leading her through bright corridors. He's excited about the tour. They passed teams of engineers, coders, and researchers. There was an energy in the air, one Judge Thorwald hadn't felt in years. Jimin greeted her at the entrance to the main laboratory. Beat Rick, welcome to our facility. Thank you for inviting me, she replied. And please, it's just Beat Rick now. Then, Beat Rick, Jimin said with a smile. Ready to see what we're building next? For the next hour, he guided her through clean, sunlit rooms filled with innovation. He showed her next-generation energy prototypes, now fully protected from corporate theft. He demonstrated new ideas that pushed the limits of what technology could do. This is incredible, Beatrick said as they stopped by a window overlooking the testing grounds. So different from the world of law. Is that why you retired? Jimin asked. Partly, she admitted. 30 years of other people's problems takes a toll. I was ready for something new. They continued to a quieter wing, where a small conference room with mountain views waited. Coffee was already set on the table. I have a confession to make, Jimin said as they sat. I suspected as much, Beatrick replied. What is it? There's a reason I invited you here today. He studied her face. During the trial, did you ever wonder why I chose to represent myself? It wasn't just strategy. I wanted to face you directly. Beatrick frowned. Face me? Why? Because I knew who you were. Not just as a judge, but as an engineer. She stared at him. What do you mean? Before your law career, you were Beatrick Thorwald of MIT. The woman who designed a revolutionary battery prototype in the 1980s. Beatrick set down her cup. Her hand trembled slightly. How did you know that? It was so long ago. I make it my business to know the history of my field, Jimin said. Your design was ahead of its time, but a company called Vertex Tech stole it from you. Yes, she said quietly. I was young, naive. I showed them my prototype thinking they'd help develop it. Instead, they claimed it as their own. And that, Jimin said, is why you went to law school, to make sure it wouldn't happen to others. Beatrick nodded, stunned by how well he understood her story. I couldn't afford to fight them. There were no laws like Section 47B to protect me back then. You know why you were assigned to my case? Jimin asked. Because of your technical background. Of course, the court often matches judges to relevant cases. What you didn't know, Jimin continued, is that I discovered this connection early on. I researched your background. Once I knew you would be presiding, I designed my entire strategy to resonate with your understanding and your history. Realization dawned in Beatrix's eyes. All that fumbling, the act, to make everyone underestimate me, including you. She laughed, startled but impressed. I should be offended that you manipulated the court. I prefer to call it understanding my audience, Jimin replied. The evidence was real. The law was real. I just presented it in a way that you would recognize. Brilliant, she said. Absolutely brilliant. They sat in silence for a moment. Two minds who had once stood on opposite sides now sharing a quiet moment of mutual respect. So, Beatrick asked, why am I really here today? Jimin opened a folder and slid it toward her. I need someone who understands both technology and law to lead our Innovation Protection Division. Someone who can help us build, but also defend. You want to hire me? I want to partner with you, Jimin clarified. Your experience, both as an engineer who was wronged and as a judge who protected innovation, makes you uniquely qualified. I haven't practiced law in 30 years, she pointed out. You won't have to. You'll lead the team. You'll have attorneys. What I need is your judgment. And your story. Beatrick flipped through the offer. Her eyes softened. You don't retire from a 30-year legal career and join a startup lightly. Change drives innovation, Jimin said. And I don't think you retired just to play golf. She laughed again. You have me there. She stood and walked to the window. For decades, she had enforced the law from the bench. Now she had the chance to shape the future, to protect ideas before they were stolen, to create rather than judge. She turned back to Jimin. Before I decide, she said, one question. Was this offer about revenge? Because my son lost his job. No, Jimin answered honestly. That was business. This is also business. I believe you're the right person for this role. Satisfied, she made her decision. She reached down, opened a garment bag she had brought with her, and removed her judicial robe. She draped it over the chair, leaving it behind, symbolically. Sometimes, she said, echoing Jimin's words to Lila, you have to do things yourself. Jimin stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Beatrick. As they shook hands, something passed between them, a spark of understanding. Two brilliant minds, once adversaries in a courtroom, now united in purpose. And elsewhere, in a nearly empty corner office, Victor Hammond packed the last of his belongings. Magnateka's board had forced him to resign. The 5-year ban had devastated their energy division. Criminal charges were still pending. He had thought himself clever, stealing ideas instead of creating them. Now, he finally understood what Jimin had known all along. True innovation can't be stolen. It must be earned.